Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us. Plenty of Browns to talk about, and that's where we begin. Browns are allegedly, reportedly bracing for an 8-game suspension of Deshaun Watson. That is according to Pro Football Talk and Mike Florio. Now, as Mary Kay Cabot alluded to yesterday, we have not really heard anything from the NFL. Dan Patrick, according to his sources, isn't sure where the talk of the shorter suspension is coming from and isn't necessarily believing it. This is from the Dan Patrick Show.
From what I was told a couple of weeks ago, that it felt like indefinite suspension. And I even asked a source on this, that could you see where he's not punished at all? And my source said, no, that's not going to happen, that he will be punished. The question is how much, and is that enough to placate the NFL? Because the NFL is worried about our reaction to it, your reaction to it as fans. Like, are you kidding me? All of this, and he got 4 games, and then appeals it and gets 3 games? That's what they're worried about. Like, how much is enough where everybody goes, okay, yeah, hope that hurt. Now we move on. We got other things to worry about. And the NFL does want to move on from this. My source said that, they want a strong punishment. And, this comes down to the commissioner. The NFL can appeal this, and then it's heard by the commissioner.
And again, Commissioner Roger Goodell, as long as there is some sort of punishment handed out, he could increase the punishment potentially. All right, former Green Bay Packer president Andrew Brandt isn't buying any of the leaks based on the new process that the NFL has, where they have an independent disciplinary officer, Judge Sue Robinson, hearing this case. Here is Andrew Brandt, former NFL executive, on the Ross Tucker podcast.
The judge is a former real judge, Judge Sue Robinson of Delaware. I don't think we can speculate unless someone's into her. Someone is really talking to her. And I doubt that she's leaking anything, seriously doubt. So what we're hearing is spin from either side. I mean, the only spin I think from the league side is that they want a year of suspension or more. The spin from the other side is like, hey, maybe it didn't go so well for the league, or maybe it'll be 2 to 8 games, or maybe it won't even be a suspension at all, or they'll go to court, and good luck with that, because the Tom Brady precedent really strengthened the league in terms of deference to the league process over coming to court. So that's not going to work, in my opinion.
And with that, let's welcome in Jeff Risdon, BrownsWire.com, and that Tom Brady reference is to Deflategate, where the court basically found that the league has the ability to hand out justice the way they see fit, in a nutshell.
That's basically what happened, and then the union went back and said, hey, we don't like this, and that's why the CBA has an independent arbitrator. Sue L. Robinson is hearing it in this case. That's what they wanted. Look, I think that the smartest thing we heard there is from Andrew Brandt when he said that he doesn't expect there to be leaks from Robinson's standpoint. And I agree with that. What motivation is there for her to leak any of the information out? I think we're seeing a lot of smart people who are doing a lot of educated guessing at it. And hey, I've done it. You've done it. A lot of the folks who've been on this show have done it. But we don't really know, and I think that's kind of where we're at, and we just want resolution for it. And the longer that it drags on, the more that we speculate about it, the more, in a way, it almost feels anticlimactic, if it can be that, when you're talking about a guy who's either going to get suspended indefinitely or possibly for just 2 games. And again, we don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows. I do think that Robinson has made her decision already. And I think that she's sort of meeting out the time for when's the best time for that? Is it going to be a Friday news dump? Is it going to be something that leads the NFL news for a couple of days? So how does the NFL want it framed? How does the union want it framed? I think she's going to let both parties know what it's going to be before it gets released. But again, that's when the leaks come out, and that's when we won't hear that. That's when the fur will fly, and we hear the actual things. But like Brandt said, the NFLPA is in a tough spot here, and Patrick alluded to it too. they have to defend a man who is presumed guilty if he's found and suspended. That's a tough thing to do because there are going to be some players, that are bothered by the fact that he is, suspended for this. There are others who are going to be, and there are a lot of fans out there I hear from daily, you guys do too, who are going to be upset that there wasn't enough to find him guilty or even charge him in a criminal court. How can you possibly suspend him indefinitely for that? That I don't know where you go with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is there's going to be a faction of the fan base not happy, regardless of, it doesn't matter what it is. Somebody's going to be upset and very upset. All right. This is kind of interesting. So Kevin Stefanski had said they're going to incorporate some elements of what Deshaun Watson does well into the Browns offense to kind of play to his strengths. You have covered the Texans for TexansWire.com. Let's take a look. This is Watson talking about his favorite play and favorite formation with the Texans.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite concepts, especially with Will and Hop up top.
So this look right here, you got 2-on-2 to the backside.
Correct.
Right? Got a safety possibly sitting in the hole where you've got an in route there.
Correct.
Anything that takes you off that side.
And with this concept, he has a two-way go. He's reading it off the safety in the corner. So you see that's why he's not really full speed.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's trying to make sure that safety is getting back and seeing if this corner really attached to Will. So Will is doing a good job of seeing it like cover 2
Mm-hmm.
and sitting on the numbers.
Right.
So that corner is sitting there, and that Will backer, he has no idea where Hop is. This Mike guy is already out of it. So if the corner attached and the safety sits inside, Hop can break out. And then I basically hollow the corner, and the corner have to make a decision. If he sinks, I can just dot Will. If he attach, then I just pop Hop over.
And the wide receivers, he's talking about DeAndre Hopkins, Will Fuller. And the one thing that became evident, he processes information really quickly, which is a marked difference from the quarterback play that we've had before with the Browns. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and that's certainly something that fans will notice very quickly when watching Deshaun Watson play when he does get to play. Hopefully it's soon. Hopefully we'll see him in the preseason doing some of these things. His ability to understand and to process that in an instant and just with a sight and have that chemistry with the wide receivers. And that's one of the things that has always stood out to me in covering Watson with the Texans. His chemistry with his receivers is unbelievable. And it's not forced. It's something where, they just give a little bit of look and they're on the same page. And Deshaun has done that with a bunch of different receivers over the course of his career. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins, one of the best wide receivers in the league. For my money, he is the best wide receiver in the league. I know he doesn't get that status because he was hurt last year, but the ability to do the things that you just saw right there, those are things that are going to open up the Browns offense a little bit more, especially with the run game. Because keep in mind, in Houston, he did not have the threat of the play action pass that much, never had a good offensive line, never really had a good tight end. There's a lot more for him to work with. And to see, look, I've done it several times. I've compared Anthony Schwartz physically to what Will Fuller is as a speed receiver, a downfield guy who doesn't always catch the ball all that well. Deshaun knows how to use guys like that and how to understand the threat of the downfield pass and how that opens things up for him. That's something that I'm not sure that the last guy who was here, and to be frank, a lot of other guys around the league understand how to do that sort of thing. That's where Deshaun Watson has been special. That's why I'm excited to see him play, and that's why I think the Browns made the decision that they did to go out and get him, because he can do those things and has proven that he does do those things very well.
The other thing that you mentioned tight ends. The Browns have a couple of young ones. Deshaun Watson uses his tight ends very well. It's a high percentage of touchdowns that are thrown to them. So take a look, this again from that NFL film session, take a look at an instance of how he uses the tight end in the red zone.
On 2nd and goal, Watson puts the leg down. Here's the snap. Deshaun to throw over the middle. Got a man, Fells! Touchdown, Houston!
So I'm reading this inside hook defender. We knew this flat guy should be taken out by the age. Corner is basically no factor. Safety sitting here. And we knew that the backers were going to flare. So if I ever feel the backers just kind of flaring, I'm just going to dot them.
The Chiefs decide to go zone everything up. Fells just got himself in the end zone, turned around, showed the 8 and the 7 to Deshaun Watson, and boy, was he quick with the read and quick with the delivery.
And Jeff, Darren Fells played here. David Njoku, they gave him a lot of money because Deshaun Watson, again, he knows how to use a tight end.
Yeah, and Fells was probably the best tight end he's ever played with. Keep that in mind. Browns fans know him well. Darren Fells is good at a lot of things. He's not a sudden guy. He's just not that kind of an athlete. Imagine David Njoku flaring out for that. How much quicker he's going to be there. That's artwork, man. That's the quick trigger there, the ability to force that ball in there in a very small time window. There are, we talk about, fitting balls into small windows. There are time windows in the NFL as well, and that's especially true in the red zone. You saw it right there, how effective he is. And again, this is a guy who's dealt with tight ends that bounce around the league, journeyman. Fells, who, I personally, I'm a big fan of Darren Fells. I covered him in all 3 teams that he's been with throughout his career. Really good guy, really good player, but he's not a dynamic or sudden athlete. And Deshaun was still able to make a dynamic and sudden play with him. I think that tells you the sort of potential that Deshaun's quick processing skills and quick trigger give. And that's really exciting, because if you've got the threat, where he can, if you're a linebacker there, what do you do when you've got Kareem Hunt in the backfield flaring out on the side? When you've got, Amari Cooper who can run the fade in the corner, Donovan Peoples-Jones can post up on the other side. The weaponry that he's got here, it's going to be fun to watch that work, man.
Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one, a question about one of the Browns' offensive linemen. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com. Time for us to head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about one of the Browns' offensive linemen.
Hey, just have a quick question for you. Do you think this is a make it or break it season for Jed Wills? I mean, this is going to year 3, and I know we got him for, 4+ stuff, fifth year option, but do you think this is the year they say, hey, we know if we've got a tackle and we decide to move on or try to look for the answer? Just want to know what you guys think. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, make or break might be a little harsh, but he needs to take a step back up towards where he was trending in his rookie season. And I think injuries, I think he was more beat up than most people want to admit a season ago.
I would agree. And it's a good question because he is sort of in the same status right now where Jack Conklin was with the Tennessee Titans after his first couple seasons in the league. All-Pro as a first-year rookie, first-round pick. Then he kind of fell off, had some injury issues, didn't really get back to it, and they wound up not picking up his fifth-year option. That's why he's in Cleveland now. Wills isn't quite that dramatic, but the injuries, the ankle last year, it was pretty obvious in going back and watching some of the game film afterwards. He just did not have the kick slide ability with his ankle after he hurt it in the opener last year. And he had other issues going on. They're not going to get rid of him, in part because they don't have anybody else who can possibly take over for him. But it's one of the issues where if he doesn't play well, they're going to have to have a better plan B than what they've got right now, which is James Hudson or the oft-injured Chris Hubbard as a backup tackle, because he is a guy. Because again, there's a lot going on with him because he switched sides from left side to right, or right side to left side from Alabama. But his developmental arc needs to keep going up, and it did stall last year. So it's a very fair question. I'm with you. I wouldn't say necessarily make or break, but it could break him. It certainly could. If he's not good this year, they're going to have to find someone else. So I don't know if he can necessarily make it, but he can certainly break it this year.
Yeah, and I expect him, if he can stay healthy, I expect him to take a pretty big step forward. All right, Browns rookies report to camp Friday. So here's a question. How do you evaluate what we see here about them, the rookies in particular?
Yeah, we're a lot of people like me are going to be out there and watching and reporting on all sorts of things, and there's ways to parse that information. You want to hear guys where they're repping on the depth chart. Perrion Winfrey is a great example at defensive tackle. Is he running with the ones? Is he getting snaps with the ones? Is he staying with the twos? Is he down with the threes? Does he have to be? Does it have David Bell at wide receiver? One of the things you're going to want to listen for and hear about him is that he doesn't have to have help lining up, that he knows the playbook. He understands where he has to be on different plays. He understands the play calls. He knows the playbook. That means that he's put the time in this offseason. That's true for all the rookies. They don't need to be being coached and being shown by their teammates where they have to be on a certain play. They should know that already. That's a very good sign. If they don't know that, that's when you start to wonder things. The other things that you see are, for a lot of us, it's going to be the first time that we see these guys in person. I know that there were OTAs and minicamp, but this is training camp ups the ante a little bit, and you're expecting these guys to be in really good physical condition, and you're going to, are they healthy? Are they in really good shape? Do they have to run to the side and have a towel or hit the water tank or the oxygen tank at any point? Hopefully that doesn't happen very often. If it does, it's a big flag. Those are the type of things that I'm looking for when I'm out there looking at rookies in minicamp. Do they understand the process? Have they shown that they've put in the work? Because believe it or not, that doesn't always happen. There are examples every year around the league of highly drafted guys who don't put the work in and fade away. I don't think that's going to happen with any of the Browns, but you never know. That's one of the things that we're looking for from a media eye, is who's dialed in, who's done the work.
Yeah, who looks like they're ready to go, basically, is what you're saying, and who has done their quote-unquote homework. All right, this from BrownsWire.com. Every team's most overrated player heading into 2022. And for the Browns, they come up with Jadeveon Clowney, former top overall pick and physical marvel, is really good at setting the edge, and his length and strength. Never been a pure pass rusher. Playing opposite Myles Garrett helped Clowney compile 9 sacks, just 14 games. But he is rarely a disruptive force many thought he would be out of South Carolina. And I think you and I have talked about this, Jeff. I think part of the problem was some of the plays he made at South Carolina, you're like, he's just going to destroy everything. That doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen.
No, and my friend Jared Mueller, my co-editor there, wrote that, but I agree with him on it. In part because I don't think there's any other Browns that are really drastically overrated. David Njoku did come up in the discussion process. Denzel Ward a little bit, because I do think that just because of the injuries and the availability, I think he probably gets oversold as one of the top corners simply because he's not always on the field. But Clowney was a pretty easy choice on this. And again, it goes back to the play that he made against Michigan, a couple of the plays that he made in the Georgia game that year, which, they're still on SEC highlight reels. That was almost a decade ago now. He's a very good player, and that's something that we had to do this. All the wire editors went across it and gave the most overrated player for every team. most of the players that are listed on there are good players, but they're probably a little bit overhyped by the local fan base or given too much love by the local media. And that's sort of where we're at with Clowney on that. Again, this is a good player that the Browns are certainly better with him than without him, but he's not the multi-million-dollar, difference maker, multiple, double-digit sack guy that I think a lot of people still think he is, even after he's been what he has been. This was a guy he's been in the league since 2014, has never had the double-digit sacks. I think we have a pretty good idea of who he is, but there are still some people that are holding out hope that he's going to be what Miles is, and it's just not that guy.
Jeff Risdon from BrownsWire.com, as always, man. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
My pleasure. Go Guardians.
All right, Jeff Risdon, make sure you read him in BrownsWire.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Deshaun Watson trade with the Texans.
Hi, lifelong Browns fan out in Seattle, Washington. My question is, since the Texans were involved in this Deshaun Watson case, why don't the Browns force the NFL's hand to do an investigation and also request one of their first-round draft picks back because they were misled? They didn't disclose all the information when they were negotiating the deal, and I think the Browns should, at least try to go after that. What do they have to lose? Thanks. I really enjoy your program. You guys do an awesome job.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. And Fred, that's immaterial to the trade that the Browns made, the fact that they didn't disclose everything that was involved. There's no way the Browns could get a draft pick back.
Yeah, Dave, they have no leverage. I mean, they made the deal. It's kind of, I think we said before we came on the air, it's buyer beware. You make that deal and you might not have him for a year. I mean, they had to feel their due diligence told them that they would have him at some point in 2022. But the fact of the matter is they really made the deal and there was no guarantee he'd ever play again. I mean, they rolled the dice, paid him a lot of money for him to play, and they still feel good about that. And as far as the Texans, made the best deal they could make, and there's no take backs. It's not like something you do in the play yard or playground. You make a deal with the NFL.
Yeah, and again, we've talked about it before. I think the Browns probably would still make that deal because they're looking at this as their franchise quarterback for an extended period of time.
Well, you look, NFL quarterbacks today play into their mid-30s, sometimes almost to 40s. But yeah, he's, I believe, just going to turn 27 this year. Even if he didn't play this year, it would really obviously hurt the 22 season, but they look at it as at least having him for another 5 years, maybe 8-10 years. That still puts him in his mid-30s. So, yeah, I think they make the deal again. I honestly do.
All right. This is from CBSSports.com. 3 questions each AFC team must answer before the start of the 2022 season. We're going to do a couple of them here with the Browns. We're going to start with adding a defensive tackle. Conflicting reports about the Browns expressing an interest in Ndamukong Suh. Adding Suh or a veteran like him would be a good idea. Fred, I've heard Mary Kay Cabot shot that down way back when as far as Ndamukong Suh went. So I'm not sure where they keep resurfacing from. Let's take it a different angle, though. A guy like Sheldon Richardson. Could you see them maybe adding Richardson, and at what point? I think they want to get a feel for the young guys they have on the roster. Is that accurate, you think?
I do think it's accurate. They talked Jordan Elliott up quite a bit. You drafted him in the 3rd round, this group 2 years ago. And I haven't seen a lot from him, but the coaches raved about him in the spring of where they felt he was, and I think they're teeing it up for him to take one of those spots. They also got Taven Bryan, and then you drafted Perrion Winfrey, and you have Tommy Togiai and Sheldon Day. So those out of those 5, they're hoping 2 of them emerge, but Jordan Elliott, I think, is a key one. And I think if they get into the training camp, obviously if they have injury, but if they were to, realize that really they need more on the inside, that's when they kind of look for the veteran out there. And I think Sheldon Richardson is a guy that we've talked about. Several of the guys on our, at the OBR have talked about him, that he would be more of a fit than Suh. In fact, we had the same report that Suh is not on the Browns target at all, other than maybe circle back and check back with the Browns from their end later in training camp. But I think a lot of that linking to the Browns was coming maybe from his camp, trying to draw up interest among some of the teams. But I think Sheldon Richardson, to me, would be a good fit. He fits in. He knows Myles Garrett. He knows these guys. And I think that he could step right in and play. They did that a couple
All right, so we are talking with
years ago
Fred
with
Greetham.
Malcolm Smith, the second leading tackle on the team.
Yeah, and Fred, you mentioned that, and again, Richardson was a guy that was pretty well thought of by Kevin Stefanski as well as the front office. Money didn't work out, which is why he left. So on that same line of thinking, so things that each team has to do before the 2022 season, number 3 on the list for the Browns was adding a quarterback. Now, we don't know the length of any suspension, but it's pretty likely that there's going to be some number of games missed by Deshaun Watson. So what are your thoughts on that? They list A.J. McCarron. Could Jimmy Garoppolo find himself in Cleveland? Probably not, but Andrew Berry has some decisions to make. Do you think if it's, say it's on the lower end, it's the 4, 6, 8 game suspension, do you think the Browns get another quarterback in addition to Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, I do. I think they'd get a veteran backup because Dobbs has never started an NFL game, and that puts you kind of in a precarious position if all you have is Brissett and he gets injured or goes down early. I don't know if you're going to be able to add somebody to start in place of Brissett at this point. That's where I felt Mayfield was a better option, but they decided it wasn't worth keeping him around and going through that again. So now you're left with Brissett as the starter, and they may look at him as the whole season starter, certainly for 4, 6, 8 games. I don't know if there's any options out there that are better. I've heard Cam Newton. My sources have told me that's a no. But, maybe it'll change. It all depends still on the Watson verdict, I think. But there's not a lot of options out there of potential starters that I even think would be better better than Brissett. Garoppolo is one that's linked, but, he's maybe later in August.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And remember, he's coming off surgery on his throwing shoulder. All right. So here are two names that have been thrown out there, and we've already talked about one of them. This is from Heavy.com. Browns trade option at quarterback. They say one inexpensive option for a franchise would be to trade for Green Bay Packers backup quarterback Jordan Love, former first-round selection 2020. Could potentially be had for as little as a third-round pick in return. The other one, same website, Heavy.com, and you kind of alluded to this. Cam Newton, a free agent quarterback, if he was suspended, unquestionably past his prime, represents an interesting option as a backup for Brissett if Watson's forced to sit out several games. He's a free agent looking for a home, would translate to an affordable and team-friendly contract. I don't see either of those as working out, and I've heard the same things that you have about Newton. Love hasn't played enough to really factor in. I mean, he's played as little as maybe a few more snaps, but not many more than Joshua Dobbs.
Yeah, he played last year, I think, when they played the Chiefs, and if they would have they only scored 7 points in that game. That Rodgers was out, and I wouldn't really call him an experienced veteran. I think Newton's probably more in the skill set that they're looking for. They have transformed to the mobile quarterback with Watson, Brissett, Dobbs, and so I feel they go with Brissett, and if they can find somebody that fits that skill set, if they feel Newton, is somebody gives them a better option than Dobbs, that would be somebody they might look at down the road. But I still think if everything goes as they hope, a shorter suspension, less than half the season or less, that they would just roll with what they have and see what's available. There's not a lot out there.
A name that a couple people have thrown out that I think is intriguing, and get your thoughts on this, Gardner Minshew as a possible backup. That kind of is a guy that's somewhat mobile. He's a backup. I think it's Philadelphia now. That would be an intriguing, a guy like that would be intriguing. He started enough that he could be an upgrade experience-wise.
Yeah, I really think the wheels will start turning when they ever get a verdict from the judge and, whatever happens there. But I think all options are on the table, but right now I don't think they're really looking too far down the road. They've had Brissett here the whole offseason, so I think they've decided when they moved on from Mayfield that they're ready to go with him. So your backup's a guy you hope you never use, but I do think they would probably bring in somebody. It's just a matter of the cost and how, to acquire somebody to be the backup.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, some key position battles on the defensive side of the ball. Fred's written about it for the Orange and Brown Report. We'll dive into a couple of them. Training camp starts next week. Sports4CLE will be right back talking Browns. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I know you've written for this on this topic for the Orange and Brown Report. Key battles, defensive side of the ball as you head into training camp, which will get underway next week. And we alluded to this in the previous segment. Interior defensive line and those starters, it's really wide open. What do you think the coaches are looking at and specifically thinking with that group? It's awfully young and inexperienced.
I think Joe Woods mentioned 5 interior guys during minicamp. And it's Tommy Togiai, Jordan Elliott, Sheldon Day, Perrion Winfrey, and Taven Bryan. So I think that's what starts. I think they're really hoping Jordan Elliott, is the guy that takes a big step in his 3rd year. And I think they're going to see what they have, and then they will go from there as training camp goes. As it progresses, if they feel they need to, bring in a veteran, then you might see them look back at a Sheldon Richardson or possibly even a Ndamukong Suh or some veteran out there. There's several of them out there that are available, but I think they know they have to get younger. They also have Jadeveon Clowney, who can move inside and spell and have a presence there, and they have a little more depth at defensive end. But I do think the 2 tackles are one of the, if not the biggest. Those are the only 2 positions that are not returning starters on defense. 9 of the 11 starters return, and the 2 Maliks were the starters last year. Jackson and McDowell, neither of them returned. So you're going to have 2 new defensive tackles. And I think right now the leaders would be Jordan Elliott and Taven Bryan, and Perrion Winfrey has a chance to step in and be a starter there.
Bryan's an interesting guy. They signed him early in free agency. It's a former first-round pick. And coming from Jacksonville, that, for lack of a better term, it's been a mess for a little bit there. So do you think they kind of look at him and think they can, unlock that potential first-round talent that was there?
Yeah, I think that has kind of been the MO of Andrew Berry, from his scouting days. This guy was a first-round draft pick for the Jaguars, didn't really live up to the hype. He has done that before. A couple of years ago, he signed Carl Joseph, who was a first-round pick from the Raiders, kind of give him a 1-year deal to see if he could reclaim it. They also did that with Takaris McKinley last year, and he actually was showing some life in the second half of the season, looked pretty good. And then he tore his Achilles. So that's what they're looking for, is kind of lightning in a bottle and hoping that talent, that they saw to make him a first-round pick, that they could get it out of him in this system. I mentioned McKinley. He's a defensive end, but I'll throw it out there. He's on the Browns' radar. I'm hearing that he's ahead of schedule, and he could even be a guy that they could bring back. And if they thought he could play this season, he could be somebody they could bring in for depth at end, and then they could actually move him inside if need be as well. But I think right now they're hoping they can resurge with Bryan. He's looking at this as a new lease on life, a new shot at his career. And sometimes guys like that make the most of it, some don't. But I think that's what they're hoping with him.
Another position battle that you talked about, starting linebackers. Take us through that and what you see there.
I really think in Joe Woods' defense, in an ideal situation, he wants to play 2 linebackers. And I think those 2 would be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Jacob Phillips. they were very high on Phillips. He was a third-round pick, but he's not been able to be on the field. He was on injured reserve his rookie year, most of the year. And last year, he tore a bicep in training camp. He did get back in the last part of the season. And in the last few games, he was playing quite a bit because both those guys can run sideline to sideline, and they can cover, and they can run with those running quarterbacks. And he likes to play 5 defensive backs with 4 defensive linemen. I think Anthony Walker obviously is a veteran signal caller, and I think he'll be in the rotation as well. But I think they want to play 2 linebackers as much as they can in what Joe Woods calls a big nickel. And so I think that's why you haven't seen that much emphasis at linebacker, because he's hoping to only play a couple. Sion Taki is the other starter, usually first and second down when they're in running situations. So you have those top 4 in Phillips, Koromoa, Taki, and Anthony Walker. And then the other guys are battling for depth, like Tony Fields, a pick from last year. And, a couple guys they brought in, free agent Silas Kelly. And so, but I think ultimately that JOK and Phillips would be your 2 guys in a 2 linebacker set, and then Walker working in with them.
The last one, we'll talk about the third cornerback, and there's a lot of depth in that defensive backfield for the Browns. But the third cornerback battle, what do you see there, and who figures into that?
Yeah, they were bringing back their top 5 corners from last year, but then they traded Troy Hill. Before they traded Troy Hill, they drafted Martin Emerson with their top pick. Most people did not have them picking a cornerback with their first pick this year after getting Greg Newsome a year ago. But as Andrew Berry says, you can't have enough of those guys in a passing league. And so I'm assuming Emerson will be one of the 5. And so really they have Ward with a big contract on one side, and Newsome. I think those are your top 2 starters. But you got Greedy Williams, who I saw in minicamp. They bring him in to be on the outside, but move Newsome into the slot where Troy Hill was. And so I think your top 2 are Newsome and Ward, but then battling for that third, I think, will be Greedy Williams, and then A.J. Green in his 3rd year, if he's ready to make a move, and Martin Emerson, as a rookie, how far along he is. But I think they're in a good position there, or they wouldn't have traded Troy Hill, their top slot. They feel Newsome can do that. So I think the battle will be for Greedy Williams, if he's the guy at the 3rd spot, if he'll be, or it'll be A.J. Green or even the rookie Martin Emerson. There's another guy, Herb Miller, who showed some promise last year, but I think it'll come down to Green, Williams, and Emerson for that 3rd corner spot behind Ward and Newsome.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. I am sure we'll be bugging you out in Berea. It all gets underway next week. Look forward to seeing you out there.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, Fred Greetham, make sure you read him, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. We will continue talking Browns. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, partners in education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Time to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about a potential court appeal for Deshaun Watson of any type of suspension.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Quick question. If Deshaun and his legal team take it to a higher court, does he still have to sit out this year or wait for their decision? Thanks for taking my call.
As always, we appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. Spencer, the way these usually work, you usually seek an injunction that would allow you to continue to play while that appeal is heard. It doesn't always happen, but that's usually why you seek the relief from court to get on the field and play while they're looking at that.
Yeah, Dave, you hit the nail on the head. Generally, when it goes to that level, the player's allowed to still play. We've seen this several times over the years. Now, obviously, I would argue if you want to see Deshaun Watson play this year, and we're assuming the suspension is not going to be for the full season, you probably don't actually want him to go to federal court with this, because if it prolongs, then you're talking about pushing that 8-game suspension to later in the season. I think you'd rather, assuming it's an 8-game suspension, I'm throwing that out there arbitrarily, but then you push it till later in the season, you'd probably rather have him get that out of the way early in the season and then be able to play late down the stretch, so obviously when you need him most in important games in November and December.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think the only way it goes to a higher court is if it's a season-long or indefinite suspension. That might be when his legal team takes it there. I don't think if it's an 8-game or a finite one that he does. All right, I know you've talked about this. Players not named Deshaun Watson who have the most to prove coming up.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of names that come to mind off the top of my head, especially on the offensive side of the ball. David Njoku stands out as a guy who got that big payday. You know, they pushed Hooper out the door to kind of make him tight end number one and gave him a $54 million paycheck that I think a lot of people around the league were looking and saying, is this guy really worth that type of money? Top 5 tight end in the NFL. So I think he certainly has a lot to prove. I'm hopeful that with a new quarterback and a system that's Kevin Stefanski runs, that he will be a focal point of this offense, but he certainly has to prove that he is worth the money. I would also say on the offensive side of the ball, Jedrick Wills is maybe an under the radar one that people might not think of, just because he plays on the offensive line. Those guys kind of get forgotten, but after a solid rookie year, this past year, some questionable play from him. I think it's left some people wondering if he can be that starting, solid left tackle protecting the blind side of Deshaun Watson for years to come. So he's got to kind of have a bounce back season here and put it together on the field with that offensive line that's obviously returning. I think another name that stands out on the defensive side of the ball could be Greedy Williams, guy who is due up soon for a payday. He's kind of in that territory where, again, without the 5th-year option, because he was a second-round pick, they got to make a decision on him soon. I think last year in certain spots, he played really, really well. Like, there was a portion of the season last year when Denzel Ward was out and Greedy Williams and Greg Newsome were holding down the fort so well that I wondered if they should even pay Denzel and just keep those two guys as their top corners. Obviously, I'm glad they paid Denzel. I think he's worth the money. But with the injury history he's had, there were some questions there for me a little bit last year. So I think Greedy Williams has shown he can do it. Can he stay healthy for a full season? Can he prove that he's worth a payday? It might mean he's worth a payday elsewhere, but those are a couple guys that come to mind for me of guys that have something to prove.
Yeah, and to your point, Greedy Williams could play well enough that he prices himself right out of the Browns thing, and that would be great for him. This never gets old. So Nick Chubb staying after it. Let's take a look as he is getting after that, and that is roughly 500 pounds of weight. He's got 4 55-pound weight plates. We checked the weight there on each side, and that bar's about 50. So he is throwing up some serious weight. And Spencer, when you look at that, that's why that guy runs through a lot of tackles.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Nick Chubb is the best in the business at that for a reason. I will say, though, every time I see these videos of him lifting weights, it makes me just a little bit nervous because, I mean, you've seen stories and you've seen videos of guys who get hurt doing this stuff. I understand this is what he does. He tries to stay in peak shape. This is all part of his regimen. But sometimes I wonder about lifting like the heavy weight, that could come back to bite you sometimes. So I hope this isn't a bad omen for him down the line. I hope he's able to keep doing this and putting this up without any issues.
Yeah, that hurts just watching that amount of weight. It's like he's lifting cars out there. All right, this is also along those lines. A graph about running backs, positive run plays, and avoiding tackles from 2021. And when you look at that, Nick Chubb and Dearness Johnson, now it's a minimum 100 carries from last regular season, so Kareem Hunt's not on that. They're pretty much 2 and 3 behind Ramondre Stevenson, the rookie from the Patriots. But again, positive runs and avoiding tackles, those are the hallmarks of pretty good running backs and good run games, and the Browns have 2 of the top 3 in the NFL there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we would all assume Kareem Hunt could potentially be up there if he had gotten 100 carries last year. I mean, we all know at this point how impressive this running back room is. It's why there's conversations about whether or not Kareem Hunt fits in this room long term, because he might price himself out or he might not be able to be a guy that they can afford long term beyond the season. So, yeah, I mean, having that depth is a luxury. We know that running back shelf life is not very long in the NFL. These guys only have so many good years in them. And so the fact that Nick Chubb is able to maybe prolong his career by splitting carries with guys like Kareem Hunt and Dearness Johnson is a good thing. And heck, now you add Jerome Ford into the mix, and we get to see what he gets to do during training camp this year and potentially in the regular season. This is easily the best running back group in football. And at some point, like, they're not going to be able to pay all these guys. Like, someone's going to have to go, I think, at some point. But I don't think they're worried about that going into this year. I think they feel pretty good about where they're at with those guys. You know what? Those are great problems to have. You have too many good football players. Yeah. Imagine the Browns having that problem. That's head coaches and general managers sign up for. That's number one. Give me too many guys that we have to figure out. 5 years ago, yeah. 5 years ago, we never would have thought it was possible, right? I agree. Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at Cade York getting in some work and some news about Jimmy Garoppolo. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery, Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. So rookie kicker Cade York, Browns hoping they found the guy that will solve their kicking problems. Here's a look at what he has been doing. That's a long one that he is knocking through the uprights. It's good to see that. York calling card he's been very accurate from 50+ in his career at LSU. Spencer, this is an area that you're in the AFC North. You've got Justin Tucker, and you need a guy that can make long field goals. It helps the offense dramatically.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you know, we talked last segment about players who have the most to prove that were not named Deshaun Watson. And I would say Cade York, in terms of the rookies, he might be at the top of the list, or he might be at least the rookie with the most to prove, or at least the most pressure on him going into the season, because he's the one guy who's stepping in, obviously, to a starting role, right? Like, we know he's going to be a starter on this team, and we know the Browns haven't had much luck with kickers for about a decade now. So he, especially when you're drafted in the 4th round like he was, you have high expectations anytime you draft a kicker, but especially coming to Cleveland, where this has been one of their bugaboos in recent years, they have not been able to get consistent kicking. So he certainly has some pressure on him to deliver and be that important piece for them that hopefully is becomes a steady presence in the special teams unit.
Yeah, loved everything heard from him when he talked about it. So let's hope that translates into the regular season in particular. So some news about Jimmy Garoppolo. So the 49ers granted Jimmy Garoppolo the ability and his agents to go seek a trade. We have this from Brad Stainbrook. The Browns discussed Jimmy Garoppolo before they traded for Deshaun Watson. Haven't discussed Garoppolo in a while, per a league source. And general conversations, nothing serious. But there's some belief that if Garoppolo is released, the Browns could be looking for him in the short term. Or if that Deshaun Watson suspension is longer than expected now, that could also be it. An important thing to note, pointed out by Albert Breer, he has a $24.4 million base salary, $800,000 per game bonuses in 2022. The Browns are the only ones that have the cap space to make that happen without, going crazy. And since it's not guaranteed, renegotiating it becomes very complicated. I don't think that they look at Garoppolo unless he's released and they can get him at a minimum, or unless the Deshaun Watson suspension is longer than expected now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think if the suspension, if I'm trying to put like a figure on it or a number on it, I guess I would think if it's over 8 games, which we got some reports this week that, again, it sounds like it could be between 2 and 8 games. This is all speculation. I'm kind of over playing the game of just guessing what it's going to be and trying to read tea leaves on a lot of these things. But if it's over 8 games, I think that's maybe where you consider going out and getting a Jimmy Garoppolo or somebody like that, another veteran backup quarterback to take the reins on this offense for a few weeks. But if it's in that 8-game range, I think honestly, like everything we've read, everything we've seen, this team seems like they're pretty confident in Jacoby Brissett's ability to kind of hold down the fort in the meantime. So I don't know that it's realistic for them, even if they are the only team that can fit the cap space on their roster. And this is coming from somebody who, again, like I floated this out there. Like I thought Jimmy G would be a good option if the suspension was going to be extremely lengthy. But as we kind of get an idea that maybe it won't be, I don't know that it's really in the cards for the Browns at this point. I also wonder if the 49ers, I know that there was some stuff today, as you showed, that, the Browns have shown some interest, and we got the reports that the 49ers are now giving Jimmy G the ability to seek a trade. But they've kind of been so coy about this that I wonder if they're 100% sure that they just want to hand things off to Trey Lance and let him kind of take this thing, and if they're 100% sold on him yet. So we'll see how this all plays out when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I did not realize that the Browns were the only one that had to that had the cap space, and it is when the money is guaranteed, renegotiating is problematic. All right, 3 questions AFC teams must answer before the start of the year. We've kind of been doing this throughout the show. One of them, number 2, for the Browns, exploring options at wide receiver. I'm reasonably sure Odell Beckham Jr. won't be on their list. T.Y. Hilton, Julio Jones, Will Fuller, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, some of the names that could be out there. Maybe it's just me. None of those make my ears go up enough to think that they'd be interested in them.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years ago, obviously Julio Jones was one of the best in the business, right? Like that would have been one that caught your attention. I guess the one for me that I would maybe be curious to explore would be Will Fuller. Biggest problem with Fuller, obviously, is that he hasn't been able to stay on the field. The one year he was healthy and he was putting up big numbers. He was playing with Deshaun Watson, ironically enough, and he got popped for the PEDs, so that derailed that season. But I do think some of the familiarity there with him and Deshaun maybe plays into potentially my intrigue in exploring him. But But also, that is like the one thing the Browns are missing for a receiver is a guy that potentially could, take the top off of defense, and Will Fuller definitely gives you that. So, I mean, I'd be willing to take a chance on it if it's your best option of that group. But I'm with you that none of these names are really that enticing. I think that's just kind of par for the course when you're this late in the game, maybe looking to explore your wide receiver options. This is kind of what you're stuck with. But all indications are from this team and this front office, they seem like they're going to ride it out with the young guys at this point, or at least see what they have to bring to the table in training camp. It seems like they're sort of hitching their wagon to these guys and thinking that they're going to put up big numbers, even though they're younger and maybe a little unproven.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, could change if they don't like what they see in training camp. You get midway through it and guys aren't developing like you see, then you might go back and revisit it. But fair enough. Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan. Spencer, appreciate the time and the insight. Good stuff as always. Thanks very much.
No problem, Dave. Thanks for having me as always. Appreciate you. Talk to you soon.
All right, Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 o'clock on Sports for CLE.